When the curtain falls, not every audience member leaves. Some souls remain, sitting in the dark, not to watch, but to continue a role they were never given the chance to finish. You're listening to part 2 of The Torn Smile, 2 Spirits. One body, where laughs don't need vocal cords, roles don't require real names, and the stitches are still waiting for a head to seal them shut. Don't smile too soon, because that smile might not be yours. If you're still here, leave us a sign, a like, a comment, a subscribe, so we know someone's still in the audience. Nate Brooks typed the last few lines on his laptop. The screen's glow casting a smug light across his face. There it is, he announced, spinning the screen around for the others huddled near the dying campfire. Clown tag. A classic from the dumb urban myth forums. The screen showed an old post on a forum with a layout straight out of the early 2000s. Simple interface. But the content was anything but. Rules of clown tag. Step 1. Find your way to Dead Willow Forest before dawn breaks. Step 2. Stand between 2 hollow tree trunks. Step 3. Say aloud 3 times, clown, 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 let's tag. Step 4. If something laughs back, you've been chosen for the lead role. Forever. Camera Sario. Phone in hand filming a vlog. Burst out laughing. Perfect. One last dumb game before graduation. Peak content right here. He panned the camera across the group. Voice upbeat. Nate. Our brains. Jordan. The mysterious silent guy. And Leela, future psych major and eternal skeptic. So, who's getting cast? Leela Wynn didn't laugh. She tightened her jacket. Eyes fixed on the fire. She hadn't come for the game. 3 years ago, her cousin disappeared in this very forest. In her jacket pocket was a crumpled map he'd left behind, leading to a nameless final point. Jordan Ellis, the quietest one in the group, just shrugged. He was only tagging along for a ride back after the break. But when he'd read the post on Nate's screen, something flickered in his eyes. Recognition. Maybe. Then it vanished. All right, Nate said, closing the laptop. Tomorrow at dawn, we try it. For now, sleep. Everyone shuffled into sleeping bags. Nate was the last to douse the fire. But before crawling into his tent, curiosity tugged him toward 2 ancient oak trees he'd picked as the stage for tomorrow's ritual. He turned on his phone flashlight, aiming the beam between the trunks. Then he froze. There, at eye level on one tree's bark, was a faded carving, half covered in moss. Old, really old. He brushed the moss aside. One word. Tagged. By morning, they reached the forest's edge. No warning signs, no fence, just a patch of sunken, dead soil where grass refused to grow. The first strange thing they noticed wasn't visual, it was silence. Wind had been rustling leaves moments ago. But the moment they crossed that invisible boundary, it vanished. The air thickened, heavy, suffocating. Leela spoke in a whisper, almost involuntarily. This forest, it's not waiting for people, it's holding its breath. They passed a scorched tree stump. Instantly, a cold wave gripped their spines. Nate glanced at his smartwatch. That's odd, he mumbled. Temperature just dropped below 50. It was midsummer. Cam, still trying to stay upbeat, raised his camera. Clown tag. Here we come. His voice rang clear, but there was no echo. The sound vanished the moment it left his lips, as if the forest swallowed it. Instead, a different sound replied. Tap, tap, tap. 3 dry, deliberate knocks from a tree nearby. Then, silence. Their first night deep in the forest. The campfire crackled, their only light and warmth. Cam scrolled through the day's vlog footage. Guys, look at this, he said, voice mixed with excitement and dread. When I panned the camera across here, Watch closely, he rewound. As the camera swept past the left side of the fire, where no one had been sitting, a dark blur flickered, like someone had been there only for a few frames. Lighting glitch. Jordan muttered skeptically. Wait, Nate said. Grabbing Cam's phone, he plugged in headphones. Cranked the audio. Activated noise filtering. His face paled. Listen. He handed the earbuds to Leela. She listened, and held her breath. Buried under the crackle of fire and the non-existent breeze, there was something else. Breathing. Slow, deep, rhythmic, like someone in deep sleep. It came from the direction of the shadow. Cam gave a forced laugh. Probably just a glitch. Or maybe we've got a fifth cast member. He clipped that section. Posted it online with the caption, Night 1 in Dead Willow. Anyone else see our guest star? He hit upload. Less than a minute later, his phone froze. Screen went black, then glowed faint white. Words appeared, typed in a grainy, typewriter-like font. Only one lead role. Don't split the scene. At around 2 a.m. It was Nate's turn on fire duty. Everyone else was fast asleep. The silence was thick, so thick. He could hear the blood pulsing in his ears. Then, he heard it. A sound from just beyond the firelight. Not rustling leaves. Not a woodland creature. It was wet, organic, like someone swallowing saliva. Slow, raspy. And it was right behind him. Nate spun around. Nothing. He shook Jordan and Leela awake. They grabbed flashlights. Scanned the trees. The beams cut through air that shimmered like invisible fog. Muted. Distant. Nothing. Then, crack, a branch snapped overhead. It dropped to the ground, a withered, dead limb. But as the light hit it, they froze. Inside the broken core oozed a thick, dark red liquid. Like old blood. Wrapped around it, a long strand of black hair. Cam had been the last to sleep. He filmed one final vlog. Camera placed low. Angled up toward his face. First night in Dead Willow, he whispered into the lens. Trying to sound brave. If I don't make it back after this, I guess I got the role. He forced a smile. The next morning, Nate reviewed footage. He paused on the last frame. Cam stared into the lens. And behind him, a hand rested on his shoulder. Long, thin, clad in a white glove, torn and yellowed. None of them wore gloves. But that wasn't the scariest part. Nate slowed the final frames. Right after the hand appeared, Cam, on camera, gave a slight closed-mouth smile. Then nodded slowly. No one remembered him doing that. The air inside the forest had grown stifling. The silence was no longer peaceful. It was enforced, as if the entire forest was holding itself still, waiting for something to arrive. The weather was dry. Still, no breeze. Yet above their heads, the sound of cracking branches echoed repeatedly. Crack, crack, crack. It wasn't random. It had rhythm, like some invisible creature was moving through the treetops, following their every step. Probably just squirrels doing CrossFit. Cam tried to joke, but his voice wavered. The camera in his hand kept rolling. Nate stopped walking. He looked up. No squirrel moves that methodically, he said. Voice dropping. And whatever it is, it's been pacing us for almost a mile. Leela looked up too. What she saw unsettled her even more. The branches that had been cracking were still intact, not broken, just bent at impossible angles, as if crushed by an unseen force. Then carefully held in place. Not allowed to fall. They stopped to rest beneath an ancient willow tree. Jordan leaned back against the trunk, eyes half closed. Suddenly, a willow branch directly above him snapped. But it didn't fall naturally. It descended straight down, vertically, as though suspended by a string. It brushed Jordan's shoulder. Soft as a pat, gentle, but chilling. Jordan jumped up, alarmed. He checked his jacket. On the fabric, a clear sticky smear shimmered. But when he sniffed it, It reeked of metal, blood. Cam bent down to toss the branch aside, but the moment he picked it up, he froze. Guys, look at this. He pointed to the branches in the wood. Deep, parallel gouges had been carved into it, like claw marks or fingernails, desperately gripping the branch before being dragged away. To move forward, they had to cross a narrow rocky gap. The terrain was slick, unstable. They went in single file, Nate first, then Leela, Jordan, and Cam in the rear, muttering commentary to his camera. Once across, they stopped to regroup. A minute passed, then 5. No sign of Cam. Where the hell is he? Nate grumbled. He's probably off filming mushrooms or some crap. He shouted, Cam, let's go. No reply. The silence grew sharp. There had been no scream, no struggle. Cam was gone, and none of them had seen him leave the path. Nate doubled back. He swept his flashlight along the trail, then stopped. Caught on a high branch, nearly 10 feet above ground, was Cam's left shoe. Leela stepped closer. The shoe was still warm. She looked down. Below the branch, a single footprint pressed deep into the soft mud. But it was only the toe, no heel. As if something had yanked him backward, lifted, dragged. No chance for his heels to touch the ground. While Nate tried to retrieve the shoe, Jordan examined the area. He found another trail of footprints, but not Cam's. These aren't his, Jordan muttered. The prints were longer, wider, but strange. Rounded toe, flat sole, like a clown's shoe. One of the prints was deeply embedded in the mud, as if a 300-pound weight had stomped down. Suddenly, guys, Nate called, look what I found. Beneath a pile of dead leaves, he'd uncovered a crumpled red rubber nose. It was crushed flat, but a frayed thread of red string still clung to the tip. No one in the group had brought anything like that. Dusk settled. Fear coiled around them. They didn't dare keep moving. Not in the dark. Leela sat beneath the tree, trying to calm her breath. Then, she heard it. A giggle. It didn't come through the air. It resonated through her nerves, like a vibration inside her spine. A sound you felt instead of heard. Did anyone else hear that? Nate whispered. Both Jordan and Leela nodded, but none of them could tell where it came from. It was everywhere, and nowhere. Not human, Jordan said, his voice taut. Not animal either. More like someone trying to laugh. Without a head. They sat frozen, unmoving, locked in a shared fear. Leela closed her eyes, wrapped her arms around herself, praying it was all just a nightmare. When she opened her eyes again, Cam was standing in front of her, silent, facing away, back turned to them. His shirt collar was rumpled. He didn't move. None of them had seen him arrive. Dawn hadn't broken yet. Jordan was jolted awake by a bizarre sound. It resembled the crow of a rooster, but completely wrong. It was hoarse, broken, like someone without vocal cords was trying to mimic the sound of a cock's crow and failing miserably. It didn't echo. It sounded muffled, filtered through thick leaves, and it was close. Oh. The distorted crow rang out 3 times, then abruptly stopped. The silence afterward was even more frightening. Jordan crept out of his tent, flashlight in hand. He followed the sound to a dense bush. No sign of movement, but when he shone his light at the ground, he found a deep dent in the soft soil. Not a footprint. It looked like an elbow had slammed down hard, bracing the weight of something heavy. His eyes scanned the surroundings and stopped at an oak tree nearby. A fresh, clean slash marked its bark. From the wound, something white and thin had begun to spill out, long, coiled. A filament. It looked like a vocal cord, pulled loose from the throat of something that once laughed. Cam had returned, but the unease in his presence was more suffocating than his absence. He didn't speak much, didn't joke, didn't laugh. He just sat there, separate from the group, wearing the same tight-lipped smile. It never reached his eyes, and he barely blinked. "Cam, you okay?" Leela asked, voice hesitant. He turned toward her, that same grin locked on his face. "I'm fine," he replied. "I'm just remembering." Jordan narrowed his eyes. He decided to test something. "Where did you go last night?" "Cam, I went for a walk," Cam said immediately. "Where's your camera?" "Dropped it somewhere." "What's the name of our university?" Cam was silent. The smile didn't change. He didn't even twitch. Instead, he whistled 3 short, off-key notes, then fell silent again. As Cam turned away to gather wood, Leela stiffened. Her eyes locked on the back of his neck, just under his hairline, stretching down to his collar, a thin, nearly invisible seam, like the stitch on a cloth doll. During lunch, Jordan suddenly spoke, still staring at Cam. "Back at juvie, there was this weird guy." Never spoke, just nodded. Every time he nodded, someone disappeared. Silence. Nate and Leela exchanged glances, then looked at Cam. Cam paused mid-bite. He lifted his gaze, met Jordan's eyes, then slowly nodded. Once, twice, each nod mechanical, empty. The moment the second nod dropped, the wind, which had been gently rustling, stopped. Above Nate's head, a branch fell. Not heavy, didn't hurt, but tangled in its twigs was a mannequin's wrist. Plastic, hollow inside, fibrous cords like fake tendons. Nate shouted and flung it away. It hit the ground, bounced, then nodded. Once, despite having no mechanism. That night, Nate couldn't sleep. He pulled out his camera, reviewing footage of Cam after his return. In one nighttime shot, something was wrong. Cam's neck was blurred. The image refused to render clearly, as if the camera didn't recognize it as human. He showed Leela. She zoomed in on a single frame. Cam, smiling. Her pulse froze. His Adam's apple was rising, but not from his throat. It swelled upward from beneath the collar. They were sitting quietly around the fire when it happened. A giggle, clear, close, but it didn't come from Cam, who remained still. It came from inside his backpack. Leela, trembling, crept over and unzipped it. No mic, no recorder, just a small, fully inflated red balloon, tied off with a fraying string. It pulsed gently. Air was leaking from a pinhole near the knot. The escaping air made a sound. Ha, ha, ha. Around 3 a.m. Nate was on watch again, eyes locked on the dark beyond the firelight, and that's when he saw it, a hulking figure, crawling on all fours, slow but deliberate, dragging itself through the bushes at the edge of camp. It looked like a man, a large one, wearing a clown costume, tattered, faded, wrong, but it had no head. From the stump of its neck, a thick, black smoke leaked out, not blood, just darkness, oily, rotten. It didn't growl, didn't scream. It emitted a groan, a sound of agony, of something trying to laugh through a neck that could no longer produce sound. Nate didn't move, didn't breathe. The thing slowly crawled back into the trees. As the sound faded, Nate finally turned to look inside the tent. His heart lurched. Cam was lying on his side, facing away, still smiling. Even in sleep, his neck was twitching. And beyond the tent, the sound of crawling on 4 limbs had not stopped. Jordan decided to break from the group. He needed higher ground, somewhere with even a flicker of cell signal. He followed what looked like a narrow ridge trail, but the path grew denser, wetter. Soon, he realized he was lost. That's when he saw it, tucked between vines and rotted stumps. A wooden cabin, ancient, walls swallowed in thick green moss. It looked abandoned for decades. Strangest of all, no windows, no door, just a sealed wooden box. Yet from between the cracks in the rotting wood, a flickering, weak light bled through. And Jordan caught a smell, not of damp rot, but a fresh sweat. He stepped closer. His flashlight swept across the mossy wall. There, a line etched deep into the wood. Just beneath the surface, an old roll, forgotten by name, but the laugh still lingers. He leaned in. Within the moss, scratches, deep, curved slashes, shaped like mouths, 3 grinning mouths, repeating. Meanwhile, Leela and Nate were trying to get their bearings again. Suddenly, they heard it, a faint hiss, like wind filtering through branches. But there was no wind. It grew louder, rhythmic, a laugh, formed by thousands of leaves brushing together, moving in a circle, surrounding them. Nate lifted his field recorder, switched to frequency analysis. The waveform danced strangely. He paled. This frequency, he muttered. It matches the breathing pattern of someone gasping after a full sprint. Leela scanned the trees, her eyes locked on a large oak branch. Broken. Yes, but not hanging down. It was bent upward, unnaturally, like an X snapped backward, and it was laughing, each knot in the wood cracking one by one. TCH. 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 Back in the doorless cabin, Jordan found the only way in, through a hole in the roof. He climbed up, dropped inside. The place was empty, almost. A thick central beam of wood stood in the middle of the room, and carved crudely into it, a human figure, head missing. Embedded deep into the neck stump was an axe, old, handle of blackened mahogany, blade crusted with some dark, dried substance. It wasn't hung, it wasn't laid out, it was planted there, as if that was where it belonged. At the base of the carving, another line was scratched into the floor. No one hangs this axe. It just always ends up back at the neck. Jordan reached for the handle, pulled. The moment the axe came free, the whole cabin shivered. Not violently, just enough to feel like something massive had exhaled inside the walls. In a shadowed corner, something else, a cloth doll, burlap skin, no eyes, no mouth. Its face was blank, except for 2 long stitches, curved downward like closed eyes, stretched too far. As Jordan stepped closer, the doll's head slowly turned, following him. No one touched it. He picked it up, felt something beneath the dust. Words, faint and smeared. Smiling with the mouth is wrong. Learn to smile with the neck. The doll made a noise, a choked sound, muffled laughter, rattling inside the stuffing. Jordan took the axe and left. He emerged from the woods. In the distance, Nate and Leela saw him return. But something was wrong. He didn't walk. He pranced, like an actor performing on stage. In his hand, the axe twirled gently, slicing the air. Each swing made a soft clicking noise, like tendons snapping in a neck. When Jordan raised the axe overhead, his head tilted sideways, almost 90 degrees. It looked dislocated, but he kept walking. Jordan, Nate called out. Jordan turned. His face was blank, expressionless, but the voice that answered wasn't from his mouth. It was a muffled chuckle, raspy and wet, coming from somewhere deep in his chest, as if a laugh had been forced in through the wrong end. While Nate and Jordan were still reeling from Jordan's strange return with the axe, Lila's mind was elsewhere. She had pulled out the crumpled map her cousin left behind. Her heart skipped when she recognized a moss-covered boulder nearby, marked with the exact same symbol drawn on the map. 3 horizontal scratches, with a red circle stamped in the center using some faded dye. This was it. The sign. She said nothing to the others. The obsession with her cousin's disappearance outweighed the fear. The map led her to a narrow path hidden behind ferns, descending into a shallow valley. A scribbled note on the map read, "The final point isn't where the water is, it's where you hear it anyway." The trail ended at a dried-up riverbed. No water, just cracked, brittle soil and scattered stones. Disappointed, Leela crouched to recheck the map, and that's when she heard it. A breath, wet, soft, coming from beneath the dry crust of earth, as if someone were buried alive, and holding their breath not to be found. She staggered back, and froze. A girl was sitting across the empty stream, on a boulder, hair matted, clothes torn, but her eyes, they shone with strange clarity in the twilight. "Hi," the girl said, calm, even. "I'm Eliza." She didn't seem surprised to see Leela, didn't ask who she was, or why she was there. It felt like she had been waiting. Eliza stood, stepped forward, and held out an old red thread, tied into 3 knots. "Take this," Eliza said. "If the knots come undone on their own, don't run, and whatever you do, don't look at its neck. It's—" Leela whispered. "What is it?" Eliza's gaze pierced through her. Her eyes bore the weight of centuries. "It's not the head that's terrifying," she said. "It's the body that doesn't know it's dead." Then she turned, and walked back into the woods, fading into the dark. Leela noticed something. Eliza left no footprints. Leela looked back at the dried riverbed. A cold wind suddenly swept up from the cracks below, carrying a burnt, acrid stench, like scorched flesh. The soil began to swell in places, as if something were pushing upward from beneath. A bulge near her feet cracked open, revealing a single white plastic fingernail, long and sharpened like a prop claw. No finger attached. It shot from the earth and landed at her feet. Leela picked it up, painted on its surface, in black ink, a smiling slash, curved wide like a mouth, torn open. Elsewhere, Nate and Jordan were searching for Leela. Cam, now quiet, distant, drifted away from them. He claimed to hear something. First, a giggle, then, a long, gurgled whistle, deep in his throat, like a signal. He seemed drawn to it, possessed. He wandered into thicker woods, deeper and darker, and only stopped when he reached the edge of a cliff. There he stood, eyes blank, staring down into the void, as if he didn't know how he'd gotten there. Then he felt it, a hand, thin, pale, long fingers, resting gently on his right shoulder. Not cold, not heavy, but unrelenting. Cam spun around. No one. But when he looked down, 5 red marks pressed into his skin, like a grip that refused to fade. Nate and Jordan finally found him. He was sitting alone in a clearing, silent. When they asked what happened, he mumbled only one thing: "It's not evil. It just doesn't have a head to know what it's doing." When Leela returned and told them about Eliza, no one recognized the name. Jordan frowned. "That name's familiar, but I can't place it. There's definitely no Eliza in our school." That night, Cam dreamed, but when he woke, he could recite the dream in exact detail, as if it were a script. "It doesn't know it's dead," Cam whispered, eyes unfocused. "But I do, and now, I'm not sure I'm still alive either." That next night, Nate set up his camera to record audio while they slept. The next morning, he played it back, and heard Cam, in his sleep, whispering, flat, monotone, unnatural. "It wants to be whole again. It needs the head." To finish the laugh, they were trapped in a thinning part of the forest when the rain began. But it wasn't ordinary rain. The sky remained clear, not a single cloud, no thunder, no breeze. It started with tiny, dark shadows rippling across the canopy. Then heavy drops fell, dense, deliberate. The trees around them soaked quickly, but not a single drop touched their skin, except on their collars and shoulders. Nate noticed first. Everyone else's clothes were splattered and damp, but Cam's. Cam was dry, bone dry, except for the collar of his shirt, soaked, darkened, like something inside his neck had been steaming upward, condensing into sweat. They stood frozen, watching the silent sky. Then Leela whispered, without knowing why, "The neck's sweat, because it's missing a head, not because of the rain." They decided to backtrack. Cam stayed at the rear, quiet, detached. He suddenly stopped, pointed down into the dry stream bed Leela had visited earlier. But it was no longer dry. The stream now churned with thick, muddy water, and it was flowing upstream. Floating in it, a round object. As it drifted closer, they saw it clearly. A clown's head. Not plastic, not rubber, wax-like, skin white as chalk, eyes missing, but the mouth, torn, slashed wide, grinning. It bumped against a rock, bounced lightly like real flesh. It continued drifting toward the shore, as if guided by a hand unseen. The head didn't move, didn't open its eyes, but Cam began to shake. His neck tilted slowly to the right, matching the head's crooked angle. "There's something," Jordan cried, pointing across the stream. Something was crawling out from the trees, dragging itself, elbows first, slow, heavy. It wore a clown costume, bright once, now torn and filthy, but it had no head. From the neck stump, black smoke poured like oil down its spine, a seam stitched in zigzags, a second mouth stitched shut. It stopped at the river's edge, like it could smell them. Even without a face, they backed away, silent, terrified. Cam didn't move. He took a step forward. The headless body twitched. It lunged for the floating head. Blind, but certain. Before anyone could scream, the head rolled gently to the shore, came to rest beside the body. No one touched it. The head rose, as if lifted, and it clicked into place. Crack, not bone, but gears. A perfect, mechanical fit. Then, laughter. It didn't come from its mouth. It came from inside each of them, like their minds had been forced to echo it. Cam collapsed, seizing, whispering only one phrase. The lead has returned to the stage. The clown, now whole, stood up, too tall, arms hanging low, below the knees, neck stitched crudely to the skull. The face still smiled, wide, split eyes dead, unblinking. They stood frozen, and then Eliza appeared from behind a tree, right behind Leela. But her eyes weren't on the clown. They stared into Leela, her voice cold as stone. "It's finished, it's act. Now it's your turn." Another laugh ripped through their skulls. This one broken. It fractured into coughing, gurgling, as if someone learning to use their throat again, choking on the sound. It didn't know how to live inside a full body. Not yet. The clown didn't chase them. It didn't run. It simply walked, step by step, like it already knew where they would go, as if the entire forest was its stage. The group broke into a run. No plan, no map, just pure instinct to escape. But every direction they turned, the trees seemed to bend like set pieces, guiding, channeling them, until they stumbled into a clearing. Too round, too perfect, grass flattened into rows, like seats in a theater. In the center, a wooden podium, old, warped, but clean. Waiting, they stopped, panting, silent. Then the laughter came again, not loud, not external, but inside them. A forced chuckle, climbing up from the spine, stopping just below the throat, as if it couldn't quite escape. Then, a voice, low, echoing, but familiar. "Let the trial begin." The clown stepped into the center, now whole, its face still torn in that permanent smile. But its eyes, those eyes now saw everything, and the stitched line across its neck pulsed, like a second mouth beneath the skin, whispering thoughts never spoken aloud. "Nate." He stiffened. The clown didn't point, didn't move, but Nate's name hung in the air like a noose. You read the forum post, you ignored the timestamp, you saw it was dated back in 1965. Nate's mouth opened, but no sound came. The clown's head tilted. You knew it wasn't a game, but you needed something to go viral. "You served me." To them. A long pause, then a soft laugh, pitying, cruel. "Your sin was greed." Nate took a step back. His shadow on the ground detached, slid forward. It twisted, crawled toward the clown, then stood upright, A mirror image of Nate. Mouth sewn shut. Eyes bleeding ink. Nate screamed, but only air came out. His voice was gone. The clown nodded. Next, Jordan. Jordan clenched the axe, but his hands shook. The clown spoke again. You saw the forest before, in your dreams, when you were 7, when the nurses said it was just night terrors. Jordan's lips trembled. You heard the laugh back then. You chose silence. A long breath. You had the instinct to warn them, but you said nothing. Your sin was cowardice. From behind the trees, a child's voice echoed. Why didn't you tell us? We could have stayed away. Jordan turned and saw a row of tiny shoes in the dirt. No children, just the shoes, wet, pointing toward him. The clown moved. One step, enough. The axe in Jordan's hands shattered, not violently, but crumbled to dust. He dropped to his knees. The shoes disappeared. Leela, she stood tall, silent, but her hands, they clenched tightly around the red thread Eliza had given her. The clown paused. You didn't believe in ghosts, but you believed in guilt. A hush. Even the trees listened. Your cousin came here years ago. He screamed. He begged. You read his notebook. You burned it. Lila's eyes welled with tears. I didn't mean to. The clown tilted its head. The neck seam creaked. You did it to protect your parents. But that scream still echoes. Suddenly, a burst of wind swept through the clearing. From the trees fell burned notebook pages. Pages she had destroyed. One floated down, landed at her feet. In her own handwriting. He's not crazy. He's just seen too much. Then, a final whisper. Your sin was forgetting. They stood, 3 judged, 3 exposed, each carrying a guilt they could no longer deny. Then, slowly, the clown turned and looked at Cam, who said nothing, who didn't move, because Cam was no longer there. The clown didn't speak. Instead, the red thread in Lila's hand unraveled, knot by knot. Silently, the last knot slipped free, and the clown smiled wider. The clown stood motionless, its head tilted, the stitched seam around its neck flexed, pulsing. Lila's red thread, now fully unraveled, floated to the ground like a fallen verdict. Cam, who had remained frozen since the trial began, took a single step forward. He opened his mouth, but it wasn't his voice that came out. It was laughter, not loud, not cheerful, but wet, rotten, as if bubbling up through something decomposed. The sound didn't match his face. His mouth moved, but the laughter came a beat too late, out of sync, like a dubbed recording. Cam, Nate whispered. Cam turned slowly. The smile stretched wider, but then, his eyes flickered, just for a moment, and something inside him cracked. He fell to his knees, hands trembling. I can still feel it, he said. The stitches, the hands, digging through my chest to find a voice that wasn't mine. He clutched his throat. I don't know when I stopped being me, or if I ever was. The clown watched. No pity, no mercy, just hunger. Jordan stepped forward. Cam, don't let it hanker. Don't let it root itself in you. Cam looked up. Tears spilled. Too late, he whispered. It laughs when I breathe now. I can't stop it. Then, he screamed. But not a human scream. It was the screech of splitting wood, of a mouth tearing at the edges, of laughter trying to burst out through the wrong hole. His jaw dislocated. The skin around his mouth split. Not bleeding, just stretching. His ribs shifted underneath his shirt, expanding and contracting like an accordion, trying to find rhythm, trying to laugh. The clown stepped closer. It didn't touch him, just watched. And Cam began to change. His spine arched backward. He stood, limbs elongated, neck cracking as if making room for a second mouth. Leela ran forward. She grabbed the last of the thread on the ground, wrapped it tight around Cam's wrist, tried to speak. Cam, you're still in there. Cam blinked. One eye cried, the other bled. He whispered, I didn't want this role. I was just a background character. Then he shoved Leela away, turned, faced the clown, and smiled. But not with joy, with rebellion. Take it back, Cam said. You want a body? Take mine. Just stop laughing with my bones. He threw himself into the clown, and for one suspended breath, they merged. The forest inhaled. Every tree bent inward, creaking, reacting. The sky darkened, not from clouds, but from a shadow that passed across the sun. When the sound returned, it was silence, true silence, heavy, final. Cam was gone, so was the clown. Only the red thread remained, burned into the ground, seared into the shape of a circle, like a closed mouth, or a final stage light going dark. Leela collapsed to her knees. Nate stood frozen. Jordan turned away. None of them spoke. Cam had ended the laugh by offering his voice to be silenced. They didn't bury Cam. There was nothing left to bury. Just the circle of scorched red thread, smoking faintly, whispering silence. That night, they didn't light a fire. They didn't speak. The forest didn't need sound anymore. It had already swallowed too many voices. Leela lay awake, staring up through the trees. She couldn't cry, couldn't think, only feel. Her chest felt hollow, like something had been scooped out. And the echo inside her wasn't grief. It was rhythm, a distant stage rhythm, footsteps, shifting curtains, an audience breathing, but no applause. Nate spent the night sketching. He didn't know why, just let his hand move. When the sun rose, he looked at the paper. He'd drawn a clown, but not the one they'd seen. This one had no face, only a stretched out collar, stitched tightly, and at the top, a flat surface, a platform, waiting for something to be placed upon it. He flipped to the next page. A theater audience made of trees. Then, a pair of boots, hanging midair. He dropped the pencil. Jordan sat beside a tree, cleaning dirt from the broken axe handle, methodically, obsessively. He didn't speak until noon. We can't leave the forest, he said. Leela turned. What? It won't let us. We're part of the cast now. He held up the axe. It's not a weapon anymore. It's a prop. He dropped it. It landed without sound, like it had never been real. They tried to retrace their steps. No compass worked. The sun spun in place. The moss grew in every direction. It wasn't a forest anymore. It was a looped stage, a set, and every path they took eventually led them back to the red thread circle. On the third day, they stopped walking. They just sat, breathing, waiting, listening, and then, at dusk, they heard it, a soft rustling, not wind, not leaves, but fabric, cloth, breathing. From above, they looked up. Hanging from the trees, dozens of shapes, sacks, puppet bags, all swaying, as if recently disturbed, and from inside each, a faint rise, fall, breath, like lungs stitched into burlap. Somewhere deep among the hanging forms, one had the same hoodie Cam wore, still zipped, still breathing. Jordan didn't speak. He turned and vomited into the grass. Nate just stared, eyes dry, lost. Leela stood. She took out the final corner of the map, the one her cousin had labeled exit, not out, but forward. She unfolded it. Behind the ink, a hidden layer bled through. It formed words, handwritten in something faded brown. If the audience forgets, the actor returns. If the actor forgets, the stage resets. But if someone remembers, the laugh ends. Leela closed the map, looked toward the shadows, and whispered, I'll remember. They left the forest without knowing how. No trail, no compass, just one moment, trees, and the next, they stood on the road, their shoes muddy, clothes damp, lips cracked, eyes older. A passing truck slammed its brakes. The driver ran out, eyes wide. Jesus, where the hell did you kids come from? We've been searching Dead Willow for weeks. There's nothing but trees. Leela didn't answer. Jordan stared at the sky. Nate asked one question. What year is it? The driver blinked. 2025. No time had passed, or too much had. In the hospital. The doctors said they were dehydrated, exhausted, delusional. Leela was diagnosed with trauma-induced hallucinations. Jordan refused to speak. Nate kept sketching faceless stages, over and over, until his fingers bled, but none of them ever said the word clown, not once. Weeks passed. They returned home, separately. No funerals were held. No obituary ever printed Cam's name, because in the records, he never existed. Only a fourth camping permit, filed, stamped, left blank under name. At night, Leela heard footsteps outside her door, soft, measured, like someone pacing a stage. Every now and then, her closet door would creak open, and the scent of aged velvet drifted out. She burned the map, but the circle never left her mind. It pulsed behind her eyes, a loop, a laugh, unfinished. One day, in a quiet cafe, Jordan sat across from her. He pushed forward a crumpled paper bag. Inside, a puppet, cloth, button eyes, a seam around its neck. I didn't bite, he said. It was on my bed this morning. She reached for it. It was warm, breathing. She closed the bag, pushed it back. That night, she opened her drawer. The puppet was there again. No bag, just sitting, watching. It didn't move. But when she leaned in, she heard a thread tightening, a stitch pulling, and a breath. Every stage needs a smile, it whispered. Every smile needs a throat. Then silence. And from somewhere in the dark, tag. The night is over. But the curtain hasn't fully fallen. We've lost Cam. Or maybe Cam just received his very first role. No one knows if the survivors truly left Dead Willow, or simply walked onto another stage. Deeper, darker, more real. The laughter has stopped, but the stitches are still fresh. You've just finished part 2 of The Torn Smile, 2 Spirits, 1 Body. If you're still listening, leave a comment, so we'll know you haven't left the audience yet. Whisper Horror Channel, where the performance never truly ends.